Hello and welcome to IMHO. Today I'm speaking to Marie Haynes about AI agents. Marie left her career as a vet in 2012 to study Google algorithms full-time. She grew an agency that helped shape the industry's understanding of EEAT and subsequently retiring her agency to understand the machine learning systems that are so important to search. For the last few years, Marie has been at the forefront of learning about AI systems and how they can be integrated into search. And Marie believes AI will radically change our world for the better, and she believes every business will have AI agents. So, Marie, you wrote an article recently titled, Hype or Not, Should You Be Investing in AI Agents? So could you, as a kickoff, please give me a summary of why SEOs need to pay attention to this developing area?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for inviting me to talk about this. I take every chance I can get to talk about AI because I really do think it's going to change our worlds dramatically. There's I don't know if you know who Demis Hassabis is. He's the CEO of Google DeepMind. And he gave an interview a few months ago where he said that there is a possibility, and it seemed like he was pretty certain about this, that agents will start communicating with other agents. And he said it'll cause a big disruption for the web. And so I think a lot that we do as SEOs, I know we have all these silly arguments about what do we call our profession. It's going to change regardless. The idea that we optimize for appearing as one of the 10 blue links on Google is already gone. But agents is a very big shift. So in my article that you're talking about, the reason why I wrote it is that I have just a small handful of clients. And every one of those clients is interested in some way in creating AI agents. Yet at this point, it's very difficult to know what to do. And so we're in this place where we can see that this is the future and we all want to be ahead of the curve. But I actually think the tech is not quite there in terms of what we can do. So now maybe that's changed since just a few days ago we had Gemini 3 released. I think that we're going to be able to do a lot more with Gemini, but we're still kind of in a learning phase. And there's many different definitions of what an AI agent is. My understanding of an agent is it's essentially a prompt or a group of prompts. And those, so let's say one agent has instructions in a prompt. That agent can also use tools. The tools might be Google Search Console. It might be Google Search itself. It might be an API for Stripe or for something else. And then what makes agents is that they have the ability to make decisions on what to do. So the most primitive example of an agent that I'm using every day now for my clients is a Gemini Gem. I think if you take one thing from this conversation for anybody who's watching is to try to create some Gemini Gems. You might have, we first kind of got introduced to this idea with ChatGPT where they came out with GPTs and you could put information in the knowledge base. So I saw a lot of people would take Google's quality rater guidelines, for example, put it in the knowledge base, create a prompt that says, use this information to help analyze a web page. And that's a good start, although it's kind of a vague prompt. A gem is the same thing. And the reason why I say to use a gem is that eventually I'm fairly certain that these gems will morph into agentic workflows. So one gem that I have, for example, is my originality gem. So Google says that the number one thing they want to reward in websites right now, in content right now, is originality. Because if I'm writing the same thing that like everybody else has already written, there was a day years ago where I could do that, and if I optimized it well, if I got links pointing to it, it would rank. But now Google's already got that information. Like if it's world known information, it's in the AI overview or in AI mode. And so what they really need is original research, original insight. So I have a gem that has a big long prompt. The prompt does start with, you are a world-renowned SEO and content expert. And I've seen people say, oh, that's silly, to tell the language model what it is. But that's actually in Google's guide to prompting, that you can kind of focus the context of the conversation around that area of expertise. And then I have the prompt is probably maybe 500 words long or so, maybe even longer than that. And it's just the way that I would look at content and go, well, you could add this idea, you could do this, like, let's pull on your original experience. And so I've basically made this prompt within a gem. I also have in the knowledge base a bunch of examples of truly original content, content that is being featured in AI mode, for example. And so now I can open up that gem in Gemini and I can say, here's a piece of content, go do your work. And that gem will analyze the content according to the prompt that it has, and it'll give advice. So that's really just a prompt at this point. The next step is to connect that to tools. And at this point, you can't take a gem and connect it to tools. If you know how to code, or if you do a little bit of vibe coding, you can create, Google has something called Agent Development Kit. And there are other ways you can use. I know a number of people that are using N8N to automate things. But I think eventually Google's going to make it so that we can just make gems and then kind of link them together in automations. So you could connect that gem to Google search. And now my agent, instead of me saying, here is my site, and here is my first competitor's site, and here's my second competitor's site, and giving it all the content, I can say, go do a search for this query, look at the top ranking sites, and now do your analysis as per that gem. So that's one thing. Then that the next step is when we start chaining those agents together. So let's say you start using my suite of agents, which I'm working on. I don't have it fully developed yet, but I see that this is where things are headed. You might not know, like, I need to look at originality. You might just say, how can I improve this piece of content? And one of my agents or gems will have knowledge of all the other gems. And it might say, this content is trying to rank for, or trying to be found for, this particular intent. And it might pull on the web search agent and say, oh, okay, well, here's what Google is showing. And then it might pull on the originality agent, or it might find out that, oh, what Google's showing is all fresh content. And so it starts to pull different agents in, and all of those agents together work together to make decisions that then spit out ideas. And then you can take it further from there eventually and have it so that the agents actually change my content. And maybe there's a step in the middle that it asks for human intervention. We always want to have a human in the loop. But we're not far from the day where all of my processes that I do for SEO can be handled by agentic workflows that occasionally pull on me for some advice.
This is exactly what I'm so fascinated in. I was actually speaking to somebody recently at a conference at Brighton SEO, and he was talking about a similar process where he'd chained together, exactly like you said, daisy chain the agents. And yeah, I'm really, really interested in this whole area. Tell me, because I know you said you're talking about Gemini specifically, and you're obviously using Gemini. Could you just tell me quickly, why do you prefer that to ChatGPT?
So I do like ChatGPT. I use both. I try to make it my job to use both because who knows what's going to emerge as the winner. I actually think both of them will. I think there will be people that use ChatGPT. I think the reason why most people don't use Gemini is because when Google first came out with a language model that was publicly available, when they came out with Bard, it was so disappointing. Like, Bard was just so bad. I wanted it to be good, but it was just so bad. And I, even when it was Bard, I made myself every day have a conversation with Bard because I knew that eventually, I'm fairly certain Google is going to win. Now, the language models improve in multiple ways, but one of the ways that they improve is by user feedback. And Google has the biggest user base, not just, I'm not talking about Gemini, but for search. Like, they understand what people are searching. They've worked for decades on understanding user intent. And so it's only a matter of time before Gemini catches up. Now, if you have used Gemini 3, depends on what you use it for, but the vast majority of things that I've seen with people using Gemini 3 and my own experience as well is that it is substantially better at a lot of things than ChatGPT is. Now, it's still easy to find things that language models can't do. I think we get a lot of dopamine from saying, oh, look, I tried this thing and it failed. Like, look at how horrible it is. It can't even add or whatever. But you're a lot more valuable and useful to people if you can figure out what you can do with it. So the main reason why I use Gemini is not to accomplish things today, but to grow my skills in what's coming tomorrow. So Google has a blog post where they start off and they say every enterprise will soon rely on multiple agents. So Google sees this future coming where, and we already see it in, I signed up for Gemini Enterprise, which like it's so confusing. There's so many different products that Google has, and it's really, really rudimentary right now. But you can, let's say you have a team, you can create a gem that becomes an agent, and you can share that with the rest of your team. So now all of a sudden, my workflow, the way that I work with language models, I can just like essentially give a little piece of me to my team if I had a team. And so businesses are going to be working that way. And then Google's got a whole ecosystem that you can see it coming together. Like right now, it's just, oh, we can kind of do this thing here. A really fascinating thing is Google Customer Experience Suite, where you can use live video and have conversations with your customers. We know that Google's using in AI mode now, you can have Google's AI do voice calls to if you're shopping to ask a store like, do you have this in stock? And so we can see that it's all kind of coming together. And I do think a lot of people will build on OpenAI. I think we need to pay attention to XAI as well. But I think that Google is going to win the game. I think it's always been their game to win. So I make it a point of using Gemini as much as I can. And something switched. It was probably when Gemini 2.5 Pro came out that instead of me forcing myself to use Gemini, I actually preferred using Gemini for most of the things that I do.
Yeah, it's just every time I sort of listen to you speak about this, it just blows my mind, and my mind is now racing off in so many directions. Tell me though, I think you've just teed up perfectly here for me to ask you, where do you think things are going to go in the next 12 months? Because if this is, everything you're talking about is happening now, where do you think Google is going to
Okay, so
develop?
time is difficult because I thought, like, on one hand, it feels like things have moved so quickly. Like, ChatGPT came out just a few short years ago,
Mm.
and it was just a fringe thing. And now, like, everybody's talking about AI all the time. I'm going to say I don't know in 12 months, but I'll tell you, like, my prediction for the next few years at least.
Yeah.
Sundar Pichai, CEO of Google, he said, and this was back in March, he said that in 2 to 4 years, every agentic workflows will be deeply embedded into our day-to-day work. And so that might be as simple as instead of me opening up Gmail, I ask Gemini to go find me the emails that need my attention, write me a draft perhaps. I'm not going to go like every email you get from me is actually me, but I might have Gemini write me a draft, or eventually it'll be able to sift through the ones that I don't need, or summarize like, okay, you had all these offers, but now I can delete those. And so that's one part of the workflow. But then as people start building these agentic flows, I mentioned N8N. I have not personally used N8N. And the reason for that was that I always want to stick with either Google, OpenAI, or X. Although I don't really use X that much, but like I said, I still think we need to pay attention. So I did not use N8N because I want to stick with Google products. But now it turns out that you can deploy N8N on Google Cloud. And so it seems like Google's on board with that. So I want to start using N8N as a way that you can chain agentic workflows together. So right now, like, it seems also vague. And I have one really good friend who's using N8N to automate her newsletter and to pull in stats and to figure out like what content is doing well and to help her write the next newsletter, things like that. But it's not mainstream yet. This is what I think is going to happen. I think that at some point people are going to really figure out how to make money with this. And in my situation, like all my different agents, if I could just get it all together, it really would be a process that would be very beneficial for any SEO to have. And then I won't be the only SEO that creates that. We're all going to start producing our own workflows that instead of me handling just a small handful of clients, all of a sudden now I could have 100 clients and do the same work because it's all going through my workflow. Once we get to the point where we're making money from, because it's wild how many trillions of dollars are being spent on developing AI, yet there's not a whole lot of financial output at this point. I mean, if you're Google, you're making money from AI. There are some companies. It's fascinating to see what Walmart is doing with AI. They have a whole suite of agents. They have customer agents that are like help you shop. Then they have agents for their employees that connect with their HR if they want to book vacation or like help them find answer questions about products. And then they create digital twins of their stores where they can use AI to predict like if machinery is going to break and predict what would happen if we move this display to over here, like predict whether that's going to increase how many sales we have. And so Walmart's doing a great job, but there's not a lot of businesses that are actively making money. There was a McKinsey study that showed that 95% of businesses that use AI are not making money from it. Although that study was a little flawed because it was based on 52 interviews. But the point is, once we start making money, and we will, like the tech will continue to improve, our ability to use it will continue to improve, then it will take off. And it's very similar to SEO. You know, there was a day where there were just a small handful of people that kind of figured out how to improve on Google. And then once people started making good money from understanding SEO, all of a sudden there was a lot of attention paid. There were tools that were created and a whole industry popped up. So I think that that's going to happen. Will it be within the next 12 months? I don't know. I feel like it might be a little bit longer. And so at this point, there's a lot of people are just completely overwhelmed. Like I made it my full-time job essentially to stay on top of what's happening. And even I get overwhelmed with all the stuff that's happening with AI. So we will get to a point where it's just commonplace. And I would say at this point, just keep learning, keep trying things, like experiment with writing prompts. The next time you go to do a task, like I have a client just this week that asked me, they had a certain number of their sites started to perform well on a certain day. And they're like, could you look into why? So normally I would open up Search Console. I have a whole routine that I would go through and look at those pages. And I'm like, oh, I should try to create an agent that would do this for me. And so I've gotten 3/4 of the way through it. Even if I don't finish making that agent, I've learned some skills that I can put into the next time that I try to do this type of thing. And so my advice would be to just try to use the tools, try to figure out what they can do, as opposed to like telling everybody, oh, it can't do this, and try to find ways that you can use it. Because the people who know how to use AI, know how to create agents, know how to make money from AI are going to be extremely valuable in the future.
Yeah, I mean, you just hit up on a few things actually, where you talk about the overwhelm. When I was, I'm working full time and I really want to be investing more time in this. And I just literally, the word is overwhelm. It is overwhelming.
Yeah.
You're almost starting at the bottom again. Um, I know you've just touched on a little bit there about what you think that people should be doing. I was going to ask you, I picked up in research in a recent podcast that you said the future of our industry is not about optimizing for an engine, but about acting as the interface between businesses and technology. And we will be the human experts who teach, guide, and implement AI agents. What do you think? What else do you think the SEOs could be doing right now to help with this difficult transition that we're going through? And do you think it is AI or nothing? Do you think that,
Mm,
traditional, do you think this is the only way to go?
I do. And maybe I'm biased. I mean, obviously, I've invested a lot of my life into understanding AI. But I don't really see another way. I mean, look at every new announcement that you see in terms of investment and in terms of like anything in business is related to AI. And I know there's a lot of talk about, are we in an AI bubble? And I don't understand some of the finances of, this company gives hundreds of billions to this company, and then they can invest it back in that company. But I know that they're all headed towards like this is the future. I really look. Sundar Pichai said years ago that AI technology is more profound than fire or electricity. That's a pretty big statement in terms of its impact on society. And I just saw an interview. One of the things I would recommend everybody does is watch whatever you can find of the leaders of AI. Sure, some of it is going to be marketing speak. Of course, Google wants us to think that AI is the future because they're building AI. And so we can take a cynical approach and say, well, oh, they're just making it all up. Or we can see, like, get little clues as to what's happening. And Sundar Pichai, I don't remember his exact words, but he did say that there's going to be societal disruption, that things are really, really going to change. So, what should we be doing right now to help businesses that we work with? I think we should be experimenting with using language models in the understanding. I tell all of my clients that I work with that we're experimenting, that I might give you something that perhaps is not as good as what I could do. But the next time we do that, it's going to be better. And so one of the things I think would be great to use right now, not just in the future, but is deep research. I love doing deep research reports for my clients, and you can use either Gemini or ChatGPT to do deep research on how their competitors are using AI. And often we'll find that a competitor has created a new tool or has put out a press release on how they're using AI to optimize their internal workflows. And so that's something that we can stay on top of. I would say for every dev team, there's controversy over vibe coding, like coding with AI. I think every dev team should be playing with vibe coding. Just last week, Google released Anti-Gravity, which is a vibe coding tool, very similar to Cursor that a lot of people use, but I actually think it's dramatically more profound than Cursor. And I saw one Google employee say that their hope is that in the future, this is just how coding is done, that you don't even, I mean, I think there's still value in learning how to code, and I don't want to insult anybody who's a dev and has put years into their craft, because you're very, very valuable. But I know myself, I've created all sorts of tools that I wouldn't have been able to do, before, because I was vibe coding. So I think that everybody, whether you're dev or whether you're not, should be playing with vibe coding. Google AI Studio. If you go to aistudio.google.com, and in the top left, there's a section that says build, and you can just describe any app that you want to build, and it does a really good job. You can deploy a whole website without even knowing knowing any HTML, knowing any web design. Like you can do a lot of things right now, and it's only going to continue to get better and better.
Yeah, I certainly am going to try and get some time, carve out some time to experiment and try a bit of vibe coding myself. I think I'll definitely have a look at those. I mean, this is just such a vast topic. I think we've probably reached a point where we can pause now and maybe revisit again in the future. It does, when I listen to you speak, it does make me think, yeah, I think I'd quite like to just give up everything I'm doing and then focus on this full time for 6 months and see where I can take it. But yeah,
Yeah.
at the moment, that's
Well,
not going to happen for me.
exactly. We all
So
have busy lives to do,
yeah,
right? And again, like if you're feeling lost, you're not alone because imagine like right now we're sort of at the forefront of all of these changes happening. Eventually every business owner is going to be just clamoring for people that can explain it, right? And so that's what I was talking about in that podcast, is being able to understand what's happening in the world and distill it down to what's important to your clients will be a superpower.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Marie, I'm going to draw things to close now. Thank you so much for your insights. For anybody who would like to hear more from Marie, and I highly, highly recommend, I've been following Marie for years. She has an amazing newsletter and a community. Her newsletter, Search and AI News You Can Use, and then her community is the search bar. So if you would like to get involved more in this, head on over to mariehaynes.com. And you can find all the information on her site there. Also, I'm just going to give a little bit of shout out for myself. Please hit subscribe if you haven't subscribed on YouTube. Also, sign up. I'm going to be having a newsletter coming out very soon. And yeah, stay tuned and keep following IMHO. And thank you very much, Marie, for offering me your IMHO today.
Thanks so much for having me.